Feel like I just made this video yesterday. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris and welcome back to another video. So today is my ranking of all 28 MCU movies, including Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Normally I would have had this video out a little bit sooner, but I was in LA all of last week, so I was very tired and exhausted and I wanted to make this video as best as it could be. I've done this video a lot. It's just more of a benchmark to keep you guys updated with my current MCU ranking each time we get a new movie, so you can expect another one of these videos in July and November. But before I give you guys my ranking, make sure to hit the like button, comment down below your ranking of the MCU movies, and make sure to subscribe to that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future MCU videos or rankings like this one. But without further ado, I'm going to pull up my list and we're going to get right into this thing. So coming in last place, or number 28 for me, is Thor: The Dark World. This is no surprise. It's been at the back of my list for quite some time now. Number 27 on my list is The Incredible Hulk. I think this is one of the most irrelevant MCU movies, and when it comes to movies I want to rewatch in this franchise, this is usually the last one I would think to rewatch. I think it's the fact that Edward Norton plays the Hulk. The movie just feels so strange and it doesn't feel like an MCU movie. Next on my list is Captain Marvel. I know this movie has its fans. I am not one of them. I think it's one of the more bland entries in the MCU. I love Brie Larson, but this movie is just not it for me. Next, we got Ant-Man and the Wasp. This movie actually took a little bit of a fall for my last MCU ranking. Now, this movie's fine. I think Paul Rudd carries it. He's got that charisma and it has its fun moments, but the movie's almost too simple for its own good. It feels like a wasted MCU entry. The movie's basically just one big car chase, and that's cool, but looking back, it's one that I barely even think about. Next, we got Iron Man 2. I have so much nostalgia for this movie because I saw it in theaters. It was the first MCU movie I saw in theaters, and I just love Tony Stark as a character. The suit up scene where he stomps on the briefcase is so dope, but it's all over the place. It's trying to set up way too much too fast, and because of that, it feels like a bit of a mess if you go back and try and rewatch this one. It's also the worst Iron Man movie, and it hurts me to put this movie so low because I love Iron Man as a character, but it just doesn't do it for me. Right above that, I've got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, this is a movie that I know a lot of people love, a lot of people hate. It has a great third act with Yondu's sacrifice and the reveal of Ego actually being responsible for Peter's mother's death, which is a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking scene. But Guardians 2 also feels like a mess because we hop around so much in the first 5 to 10 minutes that it's very disorienting. The Guardians splitting up across the galaxy. You've got Ego as a villain, but you also have the Sovereign. There's just too much going on in this movie. It never really has a clear vision, and I hope Guardians 3 sticks the landing more than this one did. Next, I've got Iron Man 3. Now, I love Tony Stark. He's my favorite character in the MCU. Rest in peace to the man, the myth, the legend. But Iron Man 3 is a movie that is so frustrating to me to this day. I need to go back and rewatch it soon. Maybe I'll have a new appreciation for it, but in all honesty, I was salty about the way they handled the Mandarin, but after watching Shang-Chi, that kind of wrote some of the wrongs I had with it. It's not a terrible movie, but for an Iron Man movie, it does fall a little flat. Aldrich Killian is another run-of-the-mill, generic villain that we've seen multiple times in other movies, so that's never something you want to see in an Iron Man film. And while it has its cool action moments and the third act's pretty dope with all of the Iron Man suits, again, it just feels a little stale, and it doesn't really do anything remarkable or memorable in my opinion. Next, we've got Eternals. Now, this is a movie that I don't hate. I think that it's okay. It's got some of my favorite Phase 4 characters for sure, from Kingo to Dane Whitman, to even characters like Icarus, who are really well developed. But the movie falls short because it's trying to be so grand and introduce these huge universal concepts in the movie in 2.5 hours, and it's trying to force a lot down the audience's throat, which makes it hard to really care about this movie because it feels so large that it takes you out of it. It's like, this is the same universe as the MCU. It doesn't feel like it at times. And it's really introducing these grand concepts about gods. It's really almost trying to rewrite the way we view certain things in the MCU. And that kind of took me out of it for a second. While the visuals are stunning in this movie and it has some of my favorite characters in the new era of the MCU, it's one of those movies that's just trying to be too big for its britches, basically. Next, we've got the first Thor movie. This movie is slept on. The first 30 minutes are epic when you've got that fight between the Frost Giants and Thor. He's kicking ass with Mjolnir. You've got a great dynamic between Loki and Thor in this movie, and their brotherhood relationship, and just the whole family dynamic on Asgard is stuff that I love. The stuff on Earth is alright. There's some funny bits, you know. Another! This movie's actually surprisingly quotable, but at the end of the day, it's just one of those Phase 1 movies that was cool for its time, but looking back on it, it's nothing too special. I think the movie does lose steam after the first act because it starts out really strong, kind of just slowly regresses after that. Next, we've got Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, this is a movie that a lot of people love, a lot of people hate. It's been the talk of the town over the past few days. It's a very divisive movie. I call it the Civil War of Phase 4 because it pits two of our heroes against each other, and it's very divisive by nature. The reason this movie's not as high is because it fails to be a Doctor Strange 2 movie, and instead is trying to be a Wanda solo movie, while also being a Doctor Strange sequel, while also bringing in the Illuminati and doing all these things at once. If the movie had just a different character as the villain that wasn't Wanda, and we got our own Wanda solo movie where we could actually focus on Strange and his relationship with Christine, and then you've got Wong's role, and then you still have this multiversal thing with America Chavez, it's just someone else coming after America, I think the movie could have focused more on Strange because Wanda does take a lot of screen time up in this movie. You could have made a great solo movie for Wanda where she has her full time to shine, and the same thing for a Strange 2 movie, but they're clashing heads too much here, which is not something I love to see. It does have great visuals, and I have to give praise to Sam Raimi's direction because it is creepy as hell. This is the most unsettling and disturbing MCU movie by far, from the deaths to just some of the imagery. It makes you feel really unsettled when you watch the movie. But at the end of the day, it's a very rushed film that peaks high in the second act and just continues to drop off as we approach the credits of this movie. It's got the most abrupt MCU ending, and it's filled with flaws, even though it does have its moments to shine. Next, we've got Black Panther, a movie that I find fairly overrated, but it still has fantastic moments. Notably, that score by Ludwig Göransson. Chef's kiss. I love the family dynamic between Black Panther and his father, and some of the action is really cool in that third act too. This is a movie that has pretty awesome visuals, and it brought the world of Wakanda to life so wonderfully. What a vibrant world that is. I'm excited to see what turn this franchise takes in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Next, we've got the very first Doctor Strange, another underrated MCU movie in my opinion that has some of the cooler visual effects in the entire MCU. This is a solid origin story for Stephen Strange, and seeing where he is now to where he started, he's come a long way. What really adds to this movie is the What If episode 4, where we see Strange having all these different realities where he's trying to save Christine. And even after watching Multiverse of Madness, it made me appreciate this movie even more than I already did. It's a solid intro for the character. I do think Dormammu and Kaecilius are alright villains, but the visuals are awesome, and it's a great journey that Stephen Strange goes on in this movie. Next, we have Avengers Age of Ultron, a movie that I find highly enjoyable. It introduces Wanda and Quicksilver. We also get Vision in this film. This is a pivotal moment in the MCU. It took us in a new direction, introduced a lot of crucial characters that are still around today. It gives us some dope action, especially the final battle with Ultron and all of the bots. And this is the first movie that really feels like the Avengers are a family. We get to see them hanging out at Clint Barton's place. They're really just bonding in this movie, and it's like the last time we see them all together on the best terms, which is sad if you think about it. It's kind of bittersweet. But Age of Ultron is a slept-on movie, and it is the worst Avengers movie, but that's not really taking a shot at anybody. Next, I've got Black Widow. I like this movie more than most people, I've come to realize, which is fine by me. It's what I define as a comfort movie, a movie that makes me feel happy inside when I watch it, mainly because of Yelena and Natasha's dynamic, plus Red Guardian. It makes you feel comfortable. It's like a family fun movie. While it does have awful villains in Taskmaster and Dreykov, I mean, they're really bad, like bottom of the barrel MCU villains. I think the plot is decent enough, and the vibes this movie radiates makes me happy enough to put it pretty high in the MCU. I am aware that it is not a great movie, but I do enjoy the hell out of it, and it's my personal ranking. That's why it is where it is. Next, we've got Captain America the First Avenger, a great origin for Steve Rogers. I love everything in the 40s in this movie. You've got Bucky and Steve's relationship. The romance between Peggy and Steve is a highlight in this movie. Red Skull is another very generic villain. Oh, I want world domination. I want to destroy the world. It's like, I don't really get behind your motives at all, and that's kind of a lot of these early MCU villains, unfortunately, but it has some pretty cool World War II action scenes, and that original suit that Cap wears is so sick with the leather jacket and the OG shield. That thing is a work of art. I really want to get that Funko Pop, which is a random side note. But First Avenger is one of those classic early MCU movies. I remember exactly where I saw this in theaters, and the post-credit scene set up the Avengers. It's just a classic MCU film, really. It's not one of the top 10 films, but it's a classic. I think you guys know what I mean by that. Next, we've got Spider-Man Far From Home, which keeps climbing up my list every time I remake this video. I fell into the trap of buying into the hate of this movie because originally I liked the movie. I saw it twice in theaters, and I enjoyed it. And then over the years, people were like, Far From Home sucks, Far From Home sucks. I was like, maybe I don't like Far From Home as much as I thought. Went back and rewatched it, and I was like, damn, I don't care. This movie is a blast. You've got Jake Gyllenhaal having the time of his life as Mysterio in this movie. You've got the coming-of-age vibes that Homecoming provides with, MJ and Peter's relationship getting taken to the next level. Ned being a total goofball in this movie, but you also have Samuel L. Jackson and Nick Fury back in the movie as well. We would obviously find out that he was a Skrull at the end, but hey, it was still cool to see him in this movie. This movie will bend your mind, especially the Mysterio sequences are super trippy. And again, I just love Gyllenhaal so much, and seeing him on screen, he's having so much fun. I think this is a funny MCU movie. It has its low points, like the character of Brad should have been eradicated from that script immediately, but I do like the final fight scene in London with the drones. It's pretty sick, and this movie's crucial to No Way Home and other MCU films, so I think its impact is going to be long-lasting, and it is a pretty rewatchable movie in my opinion. I like Far From Home. I don't care what people say. Now, from here on out, I really love all these movies, and it was hard to place them, and I know there's gonna be hot takes, but it is what it is. Next on my list is Thor Ragnarok, a damn good MCU movie that really changed the character of Thor as we know him. Taika directs the hell out of it. It's so damn funny. Thor v Hulk. There's so much to love in this movie, and the scene where he comes down on the bridge and Immigrant Song plays gets me amped. Right above Thor Ragnarok is going to be Ant-Man, another slept-on MCU movie that's like a heist film, but Paul Rudd is the reason I love this movie so much. He's one of the funniest dudes alive, and his charisma carries this movie. Yellow Jacket's a pretty mad villain, but Ant-Man is such a fun time. I could throw it on any time and feel pretty good, so I might have to rewatch Ant-Man very soon. Alright, coming into my top 10, we got Spider-Man Homecoming. I think this is a movie that changed the direction of Spider-Man as we know it, because Because after TASM 2, the perception on Spider-Man was like, I don't know if we need to see him again. You bring him in at Civil War, and then you have his first solo movie since TASM 2, and it knocks it out of the park. Vulture, to this day, Morbius aside, is a top 2 to 3 MCU villain in my opinion. I love Michael Keaton in the role. Morbius has kind of soured my views on him, but I'm not going to let that taint him in this movie too much because damn, he is a family man who will do whatever it takes to protect his family, and the scene with him and Peter in the car is one of the best MCU scenes. I will stand by that. Number 9 on my list is going to be the original Avengers movie from 2012. I remember vividly when I saw this movie in theaters and the crowd went wild when the Avengers circle shot happened. It's still one of those classic MCU moments, and this is like the classic MCU movie from Phase 1. I feel like most people love this movie or have nostalgia for it. It's the first time we got to see these heroes team up on the big screen. I feel like we've become almost desensitized to how dope it actually is to see team-ups on the big screen with all these different moves we've been getting, but this was the first one to do it, and it will always have a special place in my heart. Number 8 is going to be Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think this movie is the most overrated MCU movie, but I don't think it's bad. It's in my top 10, literally. I just don't think it's the best comic book film of all time like a lot of people praise it to be. It does give us some of the coolest action in the MCU. The highway fight scene and the hand-to-hand combat in this movie is on another level. The score in this movie is so sick when Cap's running on the boat in the opening or when they're fighting on the highway. I think the third act is actually the weakest of this film. It kind of falls into the generic, oh, we gotta stop these helicarriers, the world destruction thing, which is like kind of bland and overused at this point, but still, the plotline with Hydra infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. is huge, and this movie has massive reveals for the MCU. It also gives us Sam Wilson, so I can't complain there. We get a lot of Cap and Nat in this movie, and the action is spectacular. Number 7 on my list is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This movie's freaking awesome. There's not much I can say that I haven't said already. The visuals are so cool. It takes us into a fantastical world of Ta Lo. It explores a side of the MCU that we never really thought we would see. I think the third act gets a little too crazy for my liking, but the family relationship, Shang-Chi and Wenwu and that father-son dynamic is the heart and soul of this movie. He's one of the better MCU villains, and this is also one of the funnier MCU entries. You bring back Trevor from Iron Man 3, and he is hilarious in every line he has. Shang-Chi is a movie I need to rewatch soon. I really did have a fun time with it. Next on my list is Guardians of the Galaxy, another one of those classic MCU movies. A lot of people's number 1. It is so much fun. It's got one of the best soundtracks in movies, and it creates this family that we never thought we needed. I fell in love with Guardians when I saw it back in 2014, and I still love it to this day. It's one of the most rewatchable and just pure fun enjoyment MCU movies that will get you tearing up at the end because it really does hit home with this message about family when Groot sacrifices himself. The only issue I have with this is Ronan kind of sucks as a villain. He's basically just a pawn for Thanos, but they couldn't really put Thanos in the movie. That wouldn't make sense because they want to save him for the big movie, Avengers: Infinity War. Now we're getting to the top 5. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Number 5 on my list is Captain America: Civil War. One of the most groundbreaking MCU movies that pits two of our heroes against each other and divided the fandom essentially. This movie plays with my emotions more than most. By the time the third act rolls around, I got my blood boiling. I'm ready to go to war for my boy Tony Stark. This movie creates more conflict than any movie in the MCU in my opinion, and it really makes you feel so invested. That's why I have to give credit for it. It also introduces Black Panther and Spider-Man. It's a spectacular entry in the MCU, and it will always be in my top 10 probably. Number 4 on my list is going to be the first Iron Man movie, a movie that I hold near and dear to my heart. I watch this movie all the time in the 4th grade, literally my routine. Come home, watch Iron Man every single day. I can quote the hell out of it. Tony Stark is so cool, and this is a perfect origin story for that character. He has a great arc in that movie, and this is the beginning of the greatest arc in the MCU, which is Tony Stark's arc. It is a perfect origin, and it started it all, so I have to pay it credit. Number 3 on my list is going to be Avengers Endgame, the movie event of my lifetime. I'll always cherish seeing this movie in theaters and watching essentially the end of an era. Tony Stark, rest in peace. Cap pretty much gone after this movie. Black Widow, rest in peace. A lot of our OGs passed the torch on in this movie, and it is the perfect culmination of everything we've been waiting for. This movie delivers on the action, the emotions, the fan service. It's a perfect 3-act structure and a perfect movie. My runner-up is going to be Spider-Man: No Way Home, a movie that gives us all 3 Spider-Man on the big screen. Is it nostalgic? Hell yeah it is. But you remove that and it's still the best Spider-Man story we've got on the big screen in my opinion, because it's a story of Spider-Man going through hell essentially, and Peter Parker making sacrifices to be Spider-Man and protect the ones that he loves. It is a perfect movie, and I'll never forget watching this on the big screen for the very first time. But my number 1 spot is Avengers: Infinity War. I just rewatched it this week on the plane out to LA, and it made that plane ride fly by. This movie is the beginning of the end for our main heroes. It's a movie where the villain wins, a rarity in Marvel. I love how it splits up some of our heroes into these different pockets that we didn't know we needed. Like you've got the Guardians with Doctor Strange, Iron Man, and Spider-Man. You've got Thor with Rocket. It has so many cool little moments like that with these characters we never thought we would see interacting, which makes it such a dope movie. The Battle on Wakanda and the Battle for Titan are some of the best and most riveting sequences in the MCU. It is an absolute jaw-dropping ending, and I will forever remember being so stunned and just silent in that theater. It has a long-lasting impact, and it would probably be my top 3 MCU movies forever. But that's gonna do it for my updated MCU ranking of all 28 movies. What is your ranking? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll have another one of these out in July with Thor: Love and Thunder. Maybe I'll do some heroes and villains tier rankings then. Those things are becoming behemoths to do, but I will let you guys know what my plan is with that when the time comes. Make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell. I'm trying to make the push for 8,000 subscribers. It would mean the world if I could hit that soon. So thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.